If you're trying to figure out what kind of radio you need or what frequencies you should use for Airsoft or Milsim, then this video is for you. I'm going to break it all down in 10 minutes or less, so let's do this. The first thing we need to consider here is the size of the area that you're going to be playing in. If you're just playing in a small airsoft field with your friends, there's very little reason not to just use a handful of cheap walkie-talkies from Amazon on whatever channel you feel like using. These require no license, are very affordable, and are by far the easiest way to get started in radio communications. That being said, they're also the easiest for someone else to listen to, as all the channels are defined and in the clear, meaning they aren't encrypted in any way, and anyone else with an FRS radio could just flip through the channels until they hear you and spound your communications. In the description, I've linked 2 sets of Midland FRS walkie-talkies. At the time of writing this video, you can get 2 for $30, or packs of up to 8 for $120. You and all your buddies can likely throw that amount of money together if you were able to buy enough airsoft gear for everybody to play. You could alternatively use MURS, which will have around the same range as FRS, but slightly decrease the chance of someone on the enemy team being able to just flip a channel on the radio and listen to your conversation. There's still the potential of someone else having a MURS radio, because they're channelized and in the clear in the same way FRS is, but folks playing airsoft tend to not go out of their way to get these because they're more expensive than FRS for not a lot of added benefit. They don't require a license, but you're pretty much never going to find them as cheap as an FRS radio. I've linked 2 levels of MURS radios in the description, but bear in mind these radios start at about $60 each. If you're looking to step up the walkie-talkie ease of access in a way that privatizes and encrypts your communication, you can use the Zello walkie-talkie app on your phone or through a network radio like the K-Sun line, specifically built to work with Zello. This is essentially an internet-enabled walkie-talkie that typically will require a Wi-Fi connection or, in higher-end models, a SIM card to connect to a network in the same way your cell phone does. If you don't feel like buying a radio, you can alternatively get the app on PC, Android, or iOS. The Zello service costs about $8 a month per user, and it's generally going to be annoying to try to pair with your LARPing PTT and headset with this type of setup, but going this route can save you a significant amount of money in the long run if you're trying to get private and encrypted communications. I'll be doing a video on both the app and the K-Sun Zello radios in the future, but for now, I've linked 2 levels of K-Sun radios in the description. These are priced similarly to the MURS radios. At the start of this video, I mentioned the size of the field you'll be playing in will help determine what type of radio you need. If you're playing in a massive field, like 50 acres or more, then GMRS will likely be your best option. While these channels do require a license for each operator that isn't a member of the license holder's family, the license itself is $35 and lasts for 10 years. GMRS radios typically will have a much stronger range than FRS or MURS, while still being channelized, making them very simple to use if you buy a radio specifically built for this band. I've linked 2 levels of GMRS radio in the description. Keep in mind, both of these will require a license to operate on. Digital mobile radio, aka DMR, is going to be your first step into encrypted communications on the actual radio spectrum. The important thing about DMRs is that a lot of these started as commercial radios, meaning they're connected to the business band that I'll be talking about shortly. The fact that many started life as commercial radios means that many feature encryption. Now, encryption is not allowed on the ham bands, but is allowed on certain digital bands, which generally are going to require a business license. I ain't here to tell you how to live your life, but just know that even if your communications are encrypted, you can still be fox hunted, aka directionally hunted, by someone with the appropriate equipment for tracking down the source of a radio signal. I've added 2 DMR radios to the description. One is just under $100, the other is just over $300. Pretty expensive to get into, but worth it for its features. Business radios are a very expensive and rather complicated rabbit hole when it comes to radio communications. There's several levels of these types of radios that range from license-free, as they operate on the MURS band, to very serious, the FCC will hunt you down if you don't get this right, license-required level business band, which is a very particular part of the radio spectrum specifically designated for licensed businesses. This means you have to be a licensed business to use them. LLC, licensing, employees and taxes, the works. I'll likely do a video on this complex niche of radios later down the line, but for now I've linked 2 different business radios in the description. While these are both technically business radios, neither of them requires a license. The one on the left transmits on the MURS frequencies, while the one on the right transmits on the license-free ISM band, which stands for Industrial, Science, and Medicine. I know it may sound like those are bands that would be restricted, but they're actually recognized as unlicensed. The catch is that you need a radio specifically built to transmit on them. If you bought a Baofeng, without diving into a whole lot of legal jargon in the first video of this series, the gist is that you should have bought something better, but these are still usable. You're going to want to use the channelized MURS frequencies for now, because you don't have to be licensed to use these channels. There's potentially some legal issues around using a radio like the Baofeng on these channels that I'll be discussing in a later video, but for the most part, as long as you're following the FCC's rules for power output and etiquette, then even if a hangry ham operator wants to fox hunt you, they won't be able to tell the difference between a legal FCC part-approved radio and one that doesn't have the part approval sticker behind the battery. Follow the rules, and even if you have a Baofeng, you shouldn't have to worry too much. As I mentioned a moment ago, I'll have a video specifically about the legality of these radios and programming them very soon that will be linked here once it's live. I've linked 2 antennas in the description that will fit the Baofeng and are much better than the included rubber ducky antenna you typically get with these radios. One is for FRS and GMRS, the other is for MURS. Again, not here to tell you how to live your life, but if you want to stay legal, use MURS or FRS. It's all a legal gray area with these radios, but especially with GMRS, and even more so if you're unlicensed, which brings us to licenses and your private information. It's very important that I stop for a moment to make it very clear that if you choose to get licensed with the FCC in any way, there is a publicly searchable system that will show your registered name and address to anyone who decides to look you up. You can use a PO box to get around the address being visible, but you will have to have your legal name on your license. Licenses can generally be searched by call sign or by name and location on the FCC website. This applies to GMRS, businessman, and a massive list of other license-required bands. You won't have to worry about any of this if you're using FRS, MURS, or Zello, as FRS and MURS are both licensed by rule bands, meaning that all the work has essentially been done for you by the manufacturer to ensure that radios built for that purpose are built within the legal standard. Most any walkie-talkie or MURS unit are gonna meet those legal requirements. But just remember all of this if you're going to decide to go down the licensing route.